it is Belarus Day of Radio. I feel like that was a good one to celebrate. Not that we'll ask our guests about that because I don't know what we can do with that. But hey, if you're in Belarus listening to us, I don't think that's very likely, but we are international here at Jethro. If you listen to us on Jethro FM, happy Belarusian Day of Radio. There's also Make a Book Day, Leg of Lamb Day, and Tourism Day. I feel like Leg of Lamb is a good one. We had that in a previous Thanksgiving food discussion, but maybe we can get some help from our guest in determining the national day, because we actually have a guest to kick off, which we don't normally, but we've got Rob Rubick, former Lions tight end here, and he did some work with Fox Sports Detroit, I know. He's done some analyst work, and he's still playing, but he's playing basketball now. He's playing for the Detroit Lions All-Stars, and we wanted to talk to him about the upcoming game on Saturday and what else he has going on. So welcome to the show, Rob.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Definitely. Yeah, we appreciate that you could join us. I know the Pistons game is starting soon. I know people are trying to toggle back and forth probably between us and that. Keep that in the background for now. You can catch up. We got the we got the TiVo. We got the ability to pause
Absolutely.
now. But no, thanks for joining us. I've always liked these charity games that the players do, where they team up and raise money for good causes, like the Fraternal Order of Police and the different things that you guys are doing. So how long have you been doing that for, Rob?
Almost as long as you are old. I started it when I played, about my fourth year in the league in about 1986. So this is my 40th season or 41st season.
Oh, wow.
Running the off-season fundraising basketball game. We've traveled the state. I've probably done close to 1,000 games now over the time. I've had 80% of the guys that used to come through the Lions played, because until about 2012 or 13, we played with current guys. We had all current players, and then I remember Eric Ebron got hurt in a former Lions tight end, got hurt in a charity game down in Texas, which was actually a competitive game. And Bob Quinn and Coach Caldwell got a hold of me and said they didn't want me doing this any longer with current players, which I thought was silly, because they never really delved into what I did. And my guys waddle. They walk up and down the floor. We're going to get 30 kids in the game to play with us. We're like the Globetrotters with no talent.
And then you're looking
fool ourselves that we're basketball players any longer, because most of my guys are looking at, do they take their Social Security yet or not? But it is so much fun. And the people that come to these games and support the local police or firemen, we do both, they love it, and they leave the game and they say, I never knew you did this. How long has this been around? And it was so much fun. And a lot of times they can get free tickets because the promoters want butts in the seat. So they're going to give out 500 to 1,000 tickets around the community, get kids to show up. Because if the kids come, the parents come, they have a great time. And that's what it's all about. Spend a little bit of money, help the police or the firemen out. And it's a great cause. Budgets nowadays are very tight in cities and communities. They can't always get everything they need to protect us, which protects them in turn. So it is, and it's a great show. I mean, you go to a theater, movie, it's $10, $12, $14. Well, come on and see this. This is fun. We sign autographs at halftime, and I got a good crew coming. I got a couple of the legends of the Lions, all-time greats. Herman Moore will be there. Corey Schlesinger, two really fan favorites of the Lions. And then we have Michigan State Spartan former kicker Dave Rayner. So Dave will be with us. I do the PA now since I'm 6 days out from back surgery, so I'm on the shelf. And I have Scott Conover, who else? George Jameson and Jeff Chadwick, former wide receiver, 10-year veteran of the NFL. So we got a really good crew. And these guys are dads, and some of them are grandfathers, so they understand kids and put on a show, and we make it personal.
Well, I know you were talking about the budget for things that you're raising money for, but like you said, family budgets are tight right now. So it's nice that it's a family-friendly activity and a sport.
Now, is this Shayne or Ryan I'm talking?
This is Ryan. Shayne's here, though. Shayne's here.
Oh, Shayne. Well,
yes.
Since he was the kicker, he just kind of hangs out in the background, waits for the extra point. Is that what he's doing?
I mean, there you go. I was.
You tee him up. Okay, I see, Ryan.
I was in the net waiting.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's going to bring it home for us. He's going to have the clutch kick at the end here. That's
Where
his job.
Where do you do your show from? Are you guys both at your own home and just kind of meet on the air, or is this out of Grand Rapids?
Yep, we're in Grand Rapids, Granville area, southwest side of town.
Shayne, what brought you up to GR after your kicking career?
So when I got into coaching, I started coaching special teams at Central Michigan. I ended up meeting the woman that I married in Michigan, and she went to Grand Valley, which is where I know you started. And so I ended up coaching at Michigan State, and then I ended up coaching at the University of Florida. And we just decided that coaching hours were not great for family setting.
You can say horrible if you want to. I understand. Yeah.
So just decided to move to Grand Rapids, and that made it a lot easier to just kind of start a life there. And that's what brought me here, and I've enjoyed it.
That's so cool. I love it. It's a great city. If you have to pick one in the state, I mean, Grand Rapids would probably be number one. If you got your chance to pick where you want to live in Michigan, it has everything you need. You know, it's a smaller city, but it has a big city appeal downtown.
Agreed.
It's got the University, Grand Valley, close to it. It's, hour north of Western. It's, hour and a half from Central. And so it's, I love the area. I enjoyed my time there at Grand Valley, and my time over the years going back and doing these games all over. And we're at Allendale already this year. We're going to be in Wyoming. We were in Muskegon this weekend at Orchard View. So we pound the area pretty good. Nice.
I definitely enjoy living there. And, I've gone to quite a few of the Grand Valley games and been to some of the practices. So it's and the area is great to live in. I mean,
it is
12 minutes from downtown where I live.
For a Division II school.
Absolutely.
I mean, their facilities and the crowds they draw for home games are incredible.
Top notch.
Yeah, it is first class. And Coach Wooster, love him. I liked Matt Mitchell, and I used to do radio for them. What was like 90? Show my age. I think I was there like 95 to like 99, and I've been doing Eastern Michigan and the MAC ever since 99.
Oh, nice.
But there was a great atmosphere even then at Grand Valley, and the winning had started with Brian was there, Kelly, and then when Chuck took over, Chuck Martin, they continued, and Matt, the legacy there has been great. Now they've had their hands full with the Fair State Bulldogs here over the past few years. But still, I mean, you look at their women just won a national championship in basketball. They've had a national champion in wrestling and women's wrestling. So the entire program is just. I'm promoting Grand Valley, by the way, as you can see here. Cheap promo, but. Yeah, that's cool, Shayne. I'm glad you picked Michigan to settle down and have a family.
Yeah, Mitch and I became good friends, and I actually helped him with some of his special team stuff when he was there his last year. And then I'm good friends with Scott as well. I see him all the time.
Yeah. I've been blessed dealing with kickers. I was telling Ryan I was giving him a hard time. I said, I'll tell Shayne. Now, he played in the NFL, but he wasn't a player because he was a kicker. But he played in the NFL. We gave our kickers, and one of my best friends is Eddie Murray, and Jason Hansen. Jason did this with me has been still doing it for years with me. Another great kicker in Detroit. And I always tell people that was the problem with the Lions not having success is our three best players are 35 years. You want a good kicker, but you really need a quarterback to be your best player.
Yeah, unfortunately, that does tend to be the trend. But and a lot of times kickers get a lot of grief from some of the other guys because I'll be honest with you, I saw what you guys did during training camp. I saw what you guys did all day during practice. I would never let myself be caught complaining. I would never let myself tell somebody I was tired or any of that because I'm not stupid.
No, you were golfing.
No, well, those days ended before I got to play.
Oh, but here's the deal: when you played, I looked at your career. You weren't there when it was brutal.
Yeah,
I'm talking that I came in the early '80s with you had all the Chuck Knowles and the Monty Clyde. These guys. Yeah. I mean, we had 2 a days we had 40 practices in 20 days of full metal jacket. I mean, they get to hit maybe once or twice in camp, and they don't even go full go. We had games, Shayne. I mean, we tackled. In practice, full pads, full go, Oklahoma drill it was incredible. By the time the season started, we were so glad because the season was so easy compared to camp. It was stupid.
And I think that they've even eliminated the Oklahoma drill, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, they don't hit it. You go to practice, Shayne? I still can, because I do a show in the stadium.
Yeah.
In the Bud Light Zone every home game. and I bring in alumni, and we talk about last week's and this week's game. And they don't. I mean, I went on the hitting day. They just thud, and they don't wear even like knee pads, and they don't. I don't know. It's fine. It's way, way, way better for the players. No question.
It is, but also
what we did was stupid. It really was. The ownership didn't understand that we were the asset they had.
Oh, for sure. And but even at Florida, Michigan State, seeing when we would set up our drills and set up things, when we got to individual period, you really might have had a couple one-on-one thud up contact drills, driving your feet, but there was no collisions. And then when you had when they'd go to pods or when they would go to team, you might have some guys on the LOS that are banging up a little bit, but they didn't even want you taking the running back, even on goal line. They didn't want you taking the running back down to the ground. And it makes it really hard sometimes to get your technique right if you're not really going through it with live bullets.
No, I agree, but it's when you're paying that much money as they make now, they make monopoly money compared to when I played. You put a lot of money invested in that guy. You do not want him getting put on the shelf during a practice. As Allen Iverson, the anniversary is practice. We're talking about practice.
Yeah.
So, but it is. It's interesting. All right, Ryan, I kind of sidetracked you there. Hop back in, brother.
Yeah, I'm still here. The host of the show is still here. No, I'm glad you guys can talk here. That's good. That's why we wanted to do this on this show, so the two professional athletes could talk, because I always take a backseat to Shayne in those discussions because you guys have experiences that I don't have. So I'm glad you could talk about that. But I do want to talk a little bit more about the game so we can direct people to it and get you a good crowd there.
Yeah, it's Wyoming High School. It's 1:00 Saturday afternoon, and the weather doesn't look like, we always get beat up a little bit when you get a 75-degree day in May, which you can very easily get in Michigan, but it doesn't look like it's going to be that nice. So if you're looking to get out of the house, a lot of the games aren't on until the evening, although Pistons do play at 3 or 3:30, I think, on Saturday. But you'll be home by then. It's about an hour-and-a-half event, from about 1 to 2:30. We sign autographs before the game. A lot of guys will sit around and sign. They'll sign at halftime. We have the tables set around, and the 7 of us will be signing autographs. And you can get pictures and whatever you want. And, this is a chance to see. And the parents, you need to come, because a lot of the guys that play are the ones that you watched as kids, the Herman Moores and the Schlesingers and the Chadwicks. These are guys that had careers in the league. These aren't just, cup of coffee guys. Schlesinger and Herman, both 12 years. Chadwick, 10 years. I had 7. Scott Conover had 7. George Jameson, 15 years of professional football, 2 in the USFL, and then 13 in the NFL as outside linebacker, which is unprecedented. Besides Clay Mathews. So you got guys that you get to talk to, and they'll take pictures, and it's just a really good event. It's for a great cause, too. Like I said, I remember one year we did it, Ryan and Shayne, this police department, their vests were so old, they didn't have the current updated stuff, their budget wouldn't allow it, and we had a really good crowd, and they made like 10, 12 grand, and they were able to update their vests. And I'm thinking,
nice.
Yeah. That's a great cause. These are, as you get older, when you're young, and you're speeding and you might be breaking the law a little bit, you're like, oh, there's the cops. But as you get older and you have kids and stuff and they come down your road, you're like, yes, come down. Patrol my neighborhood. They're here to protect and serve, and this is our opportunity to help them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I can't believe you started it that many years ago. I was 3 for the record when you started it. I was 3. I was born. I was here on the earth.
I've had 3 generations come in this year. I had a guy come in who's a grandpa. Now, he was a young grandpa. He was about 45 years old. And he said when he was young, like in elementary school, he came to the game. So he had his son with him, who was about 22 years old. And his son had a 2-year-old or year and a half that just was walking with him. So 3 generations that had come to these games that I've been doing over the 40 years. And I've seen it morph from when we first started. It was competitive. We would play around the state. I remember one time we played up in Ludington, and this team rode. They had like 3 guys that played at Grand Valley. Now, my guys are dudes. Now, don't get me wrong. Back then, we were all young and athletic, and every one of us played in high school, and we were big and strong. But we weren't going to win that game. And I told that I went over to the lot because it was our show, and I told them at halftime, I said, "Fellas, you got a choice. You can keep playing like you do, and there's a good chance you're going to be the ER when you leave here tonight, or you can just kind of tail it back, temper it back, and we're going to win this game. So it's your call. Well, after about the first guy went and got a hard foul on him, they just kind of chilled a little bit and let us do what we do. And we incorporated some of the kids in, but we kind of played. But I found over the years, with what we do now, it's much more well received because we get, like I said, we're going to get 30 kids in the game, shooting free throws, putting a jersey on them, letting them play with us. We might have them officiate for a while because, whatever it is, we're going to get kids in the game, we're going to get pictures, and they're going to have fun.
It's a great event, and you get to see professional athletes compete. Yes, it's in a different sport, but it's in a sport that they're used to and playing. Who are we watching out for out there, Rob? Like who's the stars?
Herman's still our best player, Herman Moore. Herman was a 7'3" high jumper at UVA at Virginia. And by the way, Herman's getting inducted in the Collegiate Football Hall of Fame this year, which is a great honor. And I really think he should be in the NFL Hall of Fame. He changed the game. I think guys that changed the game, when I say change the game, like Kelvin Johnson, I've never seen anyone before or after Kelvin got double-teamed on the goal line, on the 5-yard line, where they had 2 DBs on the ball and press. I've never seen that. And have you seen in that sense then?
No.
I've never seen 2 guys press a receiver. 2. You commit 2 DBs, inside, outside. You talk about double teaming. Most doubles happen down the field. They're bracketing you. They're banjoing, whatever. That was a double from the line. So that's why you're a Hall of Fame guy. When we played Lawrence Taylor or Reggie White, we had to game plan for them.
Yeah.
If you did, they're going to just destroy you. They're just game wreckers. Well, Herman was like that. Herman was a 6'4", 220-pound wideout before wideouts were big. He was a 7'3" high jumper. All they would do is him and Scott Mitchell, they would show shoulder throws before anyone ever heard of it. They get in the red zone, he just throw it up in the corner of the end zone. Herman would twist, turn, and grab the tutty. So I really think guys like that changed the game. And for 4 years, he was the best receiver in the NFL. Now, he just didn't have the longevity as far as putting up numbers for 9 or 10. But man, for that streak, he was incredible.
Yes.
I agree, and that's echoed by one of his quarterbacks, who's a friend of mine and comes on the show, Eric Kramer. He talks about that every time he comes on, that's where Herman belongs.
Yeah, Herman was a freak. I mean, he was really, now there's more of them. You see more guys like that, but his jumping ability and his ability to grab the ball, he was a grabber of the football. See, when I came in the league, you guys that still caught the ball. I was a grabber of the ball. In other words, there's a difference. Jeff Chadwick played 10 years, and he was a catcher of the ball. He would catch it in his body. Like, the guys, I was a grabber. I wanted to grab the ball with my hands. No, we didn't have the gloves like they have. Shane, we could have a whole discussion on this because it's no difference. They talked about steroids. How about these gloves? Why every record? You just see one-hand catches. We had one-hand catches, but when we made one-hand catches, you had to kind of pull it in. You got it with your hand and kind of pull it. These guys, they can just grab the ball and it stops.
I've seen those gloves.
How do they do that? Well, I put on one of those gloves. Herman had some of those gloves. I took a basketball with my left hand. Now, I can barely palm a ball with my right. I took my left hand and picked it up and, pump it back and forth and never leave my hand. I'm thinking, well, no kidding.
I've seen those gloves peel paint off the wall because someone touched the wall. It peeled paint off the wall.
Yes. And I don't mind it, but I just, Beckham's catch a couple more. I watch Easter. I do Easter now, okay? And they're in the MAC, and I love the MAC. But I'm watching the receivers and the tight ends play catch in the end zone before the game. They're all just doing one-hand catches. And I know I could catch better than every single one of them because I made my living doing it. They didn't. They're not going to. But they do one hand because of those dang gloves. And I just think we talk about football. Sometimes we say, well, he was on steroids or this or that. And I'm thinking, come on now. Come on. They wore their shoulder pads the size of a cup of coffee cup on each shoulder. How easy it is to turn and twist. You can't hit anyone across the middle. I mean, quarterbacks' numbers. I mean, when I played, you got Ronnie Lott, Steve Atwater, Dennis. These guys were 203rd. Benny Blades, just looking to crush you across the middle. Now they do that. They're done. They're getting kicked out. They're done.
Yep.
So it's better for us. It's better for the players. But I just think sometimes I hear, well, he couldn't have played in today's game. Okay. Could you have played in our era? That's what I like to say.
Yeah.
It's a lot safer now, and the cameras make it look so good. The camera, the technology is so good. Every play gets broken down, and the twists and the turns and everything. It's beautiful. It's great cinematography. But anyways, all right, I'm ranting and raving. Get back to what we want to talk about.
Well, no, this is great stuff. This is why we wanted to have you too, so you guys can talk about this stuff. The game's changed a lot. There's a lot of developments.
Can I Shane something, Ryan?
Go ahead. It's your show.
Jason Hansen this. Talk about, Shane, your longest was 54, I believe.
Yeah, it was like just short of 55. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, 55 in a playoff game, but that doesn't
that's
count.
What 54 is. It's just short of 55.
Well, I mean, just in front of the line, but statistically,
yeah, okay.
I hit a 55 in the playoffs, but those don't count towards stats.
Okay. That's even more pressure. That counts.
That was a big kick. I mean, that was a long kick. I talked to Jason Hansen. He had a lot of 50s, but his were all like 50 to 54. A lot of them.
Yeah.
Now, if you're not going 60 to 65, is it different? Are they kicking a different ball, Shane? What's going on? What is the difference in the distance?
So to a degree, yes, there is something to do with the ball, but that's a secondary factor. I'd say the first factor is better athletes, not just the little soccer players coming off the field. You're having more well-trained athletes, more specialization in the skill probably, and then you throw in the fact that they just last season allowed the teams to work the kicking balls in a little bit more during the week, like the quarterbacks get to. And before that, it's been a specialized quote-unquote K-ball, each ball labeled K1 through 6.
Kicker. Yeah.
And each ball was right out of the plastic, and they had like 45 minutes to brush them down and get the oil off, but you're just not going to break in that stiff leather from the brand new ball. So, while over the years we did adapt and our skill sets were going up and our physicality was going up, that ball was still somewhat of a limiting factor. And now I think that's playing into it because it literally kind of happened overnight. I mean, guys have always been gradually getting stronger and all that, but this was overnight. And you even see it from guys who weren't doing it before. And then you see the Brandon Aubreys that are kind of doing it on the regular now. But I think that has a lot to do with it.
Do you believe that? I'm doing an interview for you here, Ryan.
Keep going.
Yes, but I got to ask because I had Hansen on this year on Chalk Talk. I've known Jason for 30 years, but he believes that Justin Tucker, his off the field antics is the greatest kicker ever. He said just what he did for so long, his consistency with distance. He said he's the GOAT of kickers. Do you agree with that? Or do you have someone you like to throw in there with him?
So honestly, I will agree with him. I mean, no one did what he did up until that last year. And for him to, not only hit a 66-yarder to win the game, against Detroit, he was banging 55s and 60-yarders before that as well. And he was at a very high click. He was the most accurate kicker in the NFL until his last season.
Well, I think the last season he had a few things on his mind.
I think he was a little distracted. I'll definitely agree with you on that. And to be honest, I wouldn't even teach his technique. I mean, he's kind of an anomaly. Like he's just such an explosive, quick twitch type of athlete that he had explosion through the ball, had great ball contact. And, it's like you see that little tiny golfer that can hit it just as far as the big guys. And Justin's not a small guy. He's just wiry. But I gave him credit. When he was in his prime, I had him as the number one guy.
Yeah, I agree. All right, we're going to wrap this up. I got people looking at me. We got the Pistons on hold, so do not tell me a score. We're pausing it here. We're going to go watch it here. My kids are waiting on it.
Catch up on the game. You've run through our break, too, so we got to catch up on that as well.
Hey, I appreciate that. I appreciate you letting me run through it. If you ever need it, you get in the season, you want to chat a little Lions, give me a call.
That sounds great. We'll definitely put you in the rotation. But
Rob, will you be at the golf tournament on the 8th?
Yes, the alumni. You going, Shane?
I'll be there.
Excellent. I want to meet you.
All right.
I'm also going to do Drew Stanton does one in Lansing on the 19th.
Okay.
If he's there. Do you know Drew at all?
I've met him. I'll look into that.
Yeah. So, okay. That would be good. I know he's always looking for some celebs to come by. I'm having back surgery in 6 days, so I'll be on the shelf. I still like going and riding in that cart and visiting.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, fellas. I appreciate having me.
Thanks, Rob. And go and check him out on Saturday here. Enjoy the game.
Yep. Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Rob. All right, that was a segment hosted by Rob Rubick here. Interview with Shayne. I liked it. A lot of good stuff came out there, but be sure to check them out in the game. We also have some tickets to give away for said game, so be sure to tune in for that and stick with us. We'll come back in studio here and further interview Shayne. You're listening to Shayne Graham's Extra Points on Jethro FM. Back in studio here with Shayne. That segment went different. I was worried he was going to try to attack Shayne for being a kicker, but then they teamed up and cut me out. So I'm still here, but no, I want to talk about a few things with Shayne here, and one of them he just brought up to me. This is always very interesting to me, this kind of stuff, kind of moral dilemmas, philosophical debates. I love that kind of stuff. That's one of the kind of wavelengths that Shayne and I connect on. But you were the one that found this one, Shayne, so I'll let you introduce it because this is a concept. I'm familiar with the concept, but I didn't know that this was kind of a recent viral question that's been posed.
So I really had no idea what it was about until it was brought to my attention, and then it brought forward some lively conversation. The red button versus the blue button. The red button is kind of, if you push the red button instead of the blue button, you survive, you get to live. The blue button is if 50% of the people press the button, everyone lives. But if less than 50% of the people press the blue button, then only the people who press the red button live. So it's kind of that moral dilemma. Is it a me versus us type of situation?
Now, I think the answer is easy to this one.
I have my easy answer as well.
But I'll have you go first because you introduced it. I'm curious to hear your answer, but I won't change my answer. I've got it locked in. I'm on the game show. I've locked in my answer.
So I've locked in my answer as well, and it is the red button all day long.
Okay, interesting. So we are on opposite sides.
We are on opposite sides. Okay. So why doesn't everyone just hit the red button, and then everybody wins? Okay, there's no dilemma after that. But I understand everyone's like, well, what about the people that believe the best in society and everyone who wants everyone to live? And I get that side as well. But to me, it's kind of like, if you're on an airplane and the oxygen mask drops in front of your face, what's your instructions?
To put it on yourself first.
Take care of yourself
first. And then if you have somebody with you, then assist them with the mask, the child.
After that. So you have to think of self-preservation first. If not, you can't depend on society, and because then you're making a decision that you might not survive.
You're taking it out of your hands.
Based on other people's. And I always believe in creating my own fate and creating my own destiny and having control of certain things. And I just believe that, hey, I'm going to make sure that I'm preserved, and then let's hope everybody else does their thing too.
It's interesting. That's a great point. I didn't think we were going to be on opposite sides of this. You just introduced this to me, so I haven't really had a lot of time where we're getting into a debate show. Now we're Stephen A. Smith and Skip Bayless. But no, I kind of, it's funny when you had your preamble about why you chose red. That's part of the reason I chose the blue, because that's the way I see it. Is that ensures that if everybody chooses that, because you're saying if everybody chooses red, then you're all good. But if just half of the people choose blue, then everybody's good. So I guess I'm
more
kind
than
of
half, yeah.
I get what happens if it goes 50-50?
If it goes 50-50,
if that tie break to red, or we don't know. We'll have to. There's a new color in there.
I guess that would probably go tie break to the red.
Yeah, we'll have to see what happens in the. Yeah, hopefully no tiebreaker in there. But no, that's why I thought the blue side of things, because basically then you're not losing anybody in the process if you're choosing blue, and you just have, because it's hard to get this might get very philosophical here, but it's hard to get anybody to unify on anything. We're seeing that in a lot of different
and you're
realms.
Assuming that more people are going to choose blue, so you're taking the control out of your hands, and you're assuming, and honestly, that's, empathy can be a great thing, but I think sometimes we can be a little overly empathetic on certain things that honestly create either distractions or downfalls, whether it's society or not. And I think that sometimes you have to think about survival of the fittest, right? And I think when we have control of that, if more people look to take care of their own business first without worrying about everybody else's business, I think the world would actually be a much more functional place. But so many people want to be so empathetic. They want to solve all these worldwide crises, and they're not even taking care of their business at home. They're not even taking care of the business they actually can control. They all want to put their hands in something that all of us can put our hands on, but really not make a difference. But we want to do it anyway because it feels like the moral thing to do. But we need to take care of our own business, and that's the way I see it.
And that's interesting because I wholeheartedly agree with that concept. I think I live that concept. I really do. I do try to take care. Because I'm a big proponent of this. I mean, we even talk about it with the sports side of the show. But it's like, when people call into sports radio shows and they say, well, this person should have done this, or they pay too much attention to politics, or they pay too much attention to issues that they really can't affect in any sort of measurable way. They just are complaining. They're yelling at the clouds. They're writing letters to the editor. They're just complaining for the sake of complaining. And in my opinion, and it sounds like you share this opinion, that you can then use that time and pay attention to your own backyard. Mm-hmm. You can pay attention to your family, yourself, the people that you can measurably help. There's all sorts of people in our lives that we can help. We can't really do that on a grander scale by posting political opinion on Facebook or calling into a sports radio show, which we don't allow here so far, but to a different sports radio show and say, well, this guy should have done this. The kicker should have made the kick. The receiver shouldn't have dropped the pass, et cetera, et cetera. But the irony is that I guess the reason why I'm going for the blue is, and I guess this is probably one of the crux of this, why it's a moral dilemma, because your solution, what you're doing, if you win, then you're eliminating some of the population. You're eliminating whoever chose blue because when you said, why doesn't everybody choose red, whatever the opinion is, I know there's one thing for certain. Not everybody is going to choose one thing because it's just not the way the world works right now. Like, we can't agree on really anything. And so then you are kind of taking that into your own hands and you're saying there's too much of this, too much of that, but you are then culling the population of people that might be a little bit more empathetic. And then what does that population look like after this kind of post-apocalyptic moment where you pushed the button and you got rid of a lot of empaths there?
Well, but imagine if the empaths win, okay?
Then everybody's still around.
Everyone's still around, okay? But, okay, the way I kind of see it is, if you get close to half and half, and you get some of the the Reds don't quite go over 50, so you win, everybody wins, that's great. I just don't see people doing that. Because there are going to be people like me that feel like I'm going to take care of myself and be able to help other people and take care of other people. And you can see that as selfishness, but yet it's also saying, I believe that enough people are also going to do this, so I'm not, those that choose the other side, that's different. But I just believe in taking care of my business, and I'm going to make sure that I don't come under the control of someone else's decision.
And let me just make sure I have this scenario correct, because you introduced it to me as we were going on air. But if it's 55% red, then everybody that selected blue, those 45%, they're dead, right? That's the scenario. Is it, because that's how I'm understanding it?
I think so.
Okay, and so then if it's 55% blue, everybody's still around. That's kind of what. Okay, I just want to make sure I got that. I got
now
that
we have
right.
a stronger population.
Well, and yeah, you're you're going Darwinism here. Shayne's winning the Darwin awards, but the real Darwin awards, not the fake Darwin awards where somebody like tries to steal from a convenience store and then trips on their own shoelace and throws their head through a machine or whatever. But no, it's interesting. Yeah, I understand the argument, but part of it too, maybe, I have a background in intelligence. I have a background in government work. That was all about the greater good. That was what we were doing, is we were making a lot of decisions. And because this was, to get deep for a second, this was kind of the decision we had to make going into the government work. You knew that it was a possibility that you would lose your life in the course of that, for the greater good, to help the people. That's the only reason you lose your life, really, and that's the only justification of it, as far as you're putting yourself at risk, and it's not the most self-preservation based job, for sure. So I knew I was actively making that decision. So that's how I've always been kind of wired. So that's why I have my answer. But yeah, with your answer, I mean, it's like, I'm sure there's some people that are saying, hey, that one guy that we didn't even hear in the first segment because Rob Rubick was hosting, he's kind of dumb anyways, because he's not gonna survive under one of the scenarios, whereas you're gonna survive under both. And that's probably to kind of play devil's advocate and kind of work on both sides, as the empath that I am, which is maybe part of the reason I chose my answer. That's the plus for your side.
I certainly see it almost from the oxygen mask on the airplane scenario, but also making sure that I seal my own fate. But it kind of reminds me of a George Patton quote where, he doesn't want to celebrate. I don't want to say celebrate. He doesn't want people to be proud of those that gave their life. He wants the other people to give their life for their country so that they can win and they can live. Right. So his whole thing is, and I may have said that quote wrong, but because I think there's some words in there I probably can't say, but I think it has more to do with, how about we win and survive and let the other people die for their country while we do what we do and we win.
Yeah, Rob already helped us hit the quota for the FCC, so we don't need to we don't need to do that here. But no, it's an interesting. Yeah, I'm starting to see some of this quote. We can't read it on air, but Shayne has the impetus of the quote. Shayne has the idea of the quote. But no, this is an interesting discussion. We may pick it up after the break here, but we got to take a quick break since our former host of the first segment, Rob Rubick, put us behind. So we're going to catch up and come back with Shayne in studio. Stick with us. You're listening to Shayne Graham's Extra Points on Jethro FM. I'm back here in studio with Shayne. A great discussion there. I really enjoyed that. We're gonna do more of that. I can just tell. It's not even that we have the plan to do that, but these are interesting discussions for people that are familiar with things like the trolley problem. These are things that have existed for a long time. That's basically a new version of the trolley problem. And Shayne, have you ever seen the show The Good Place? Have you heard of that show? It's a Michael Schur show.
Think so.
He was a writer on The Office, and then he did Parks and Rec, and then Brooklyn Nine-Nine. He's a huge baseball fan. I think he has a podcast with Joe Posnanski, and he's a big sports fan, but mainly baseball fan. But anyways, the reason I brought it up is because there's a lot of these kinds of discussions in there, because without giving away too much of the premise of The Good Place, the premise is that they're in heaven at the beginning of the show. These people have died and they go to heaven. And then the whole show takes place basically in the afterlife, and they talk about like what merits getting to the afterlife. And it's a lot of this philosophical, moral discussions, looking out for the greater good versus yourself. And so if this kind of piqued your interest, you might like that. It's a comedy too. It's a heavy subject, but it's a comedy.
That's part of the whole Prime Directive for Star Trek as well.
That's true. Yeah, and I never really got into that one a ton, but I know. I mean, there's so much. There's so much of it too.
So I was. Yeah.
that's at the heart of some of these. I mean, even when you talk, I didn't watch this show, but you talk about like a Game of Thrones, like those are the shows that tend to kind of reel people in because it's not just silly. People could say, "Oh, well, Star Trek, it got Spock with the ears, and it's got all this other stuff." No, there's a heart to it. There's morality. There's different conundrums that they get into. So yeah, The Good Place is interesting though. That's one of my favorite shows. It made me think of it when we were having that discussion here. But I wanted to, since we're kind of already on the more serious side of things, I wanted to hit this because you shared this on your social media. And I wanted to make sure to highlight it because I think it's an act worth highlighting, and kind of a piggyback off of the previous segment, because this is somebody that chose to look out for the greater good, a teammate of yours, and again, you were the one that posted it, so I'll kind of let you set it up. But I wanted to talk about your former teammate and buddy Roniel Whitaker and what he did here because it's a great story.
So Roniel was a teammate of mine at Virginia Tech. Came in, became one of the favorites in the locker room among everybody because he just had so much personality. His uncle was also a boxer, Sweet Pea Whitaker.
Great name.
So he was, he was just very as soon as he got there, and then he ended up having an NFL career, played for Minnesota Vikings. May have played other places as well. I can't remember. But, over the years, we all stay in touch. We get to see each other when we go back for alumni events, things like that. And, we all see each other, what we do on social media. And then all of a sudden, you just find out, holy crap, he's gone. Unfortunately, it seems that most of my former teammates have fallen to self-inflicted things, but his was an aneurysm. Mm-hmm. And, it's just not something you just think about, like someone who looked like they were in good physical shape and, looked still young, in his early mid-40s. And it's hard to just imagine something like that happening. But he was an organ donor. And I don't know the exact number. It might have been 6, 7.
I was seeing it was 4. They were kind of doing it almost as an equation. It was 4 plus 2, so I think it was 6 because it was 4 with the main organs, and then he there was a couple other things, so I think it was 6 total.
So knowing that 6 people benefited a longer life because he unfortunately left but his being able to donate really got to change another 6 families' lives.
It's a great story. It's obviously an unfortunate event that preceded it, and and our thoughts go out to his family and all of that. That's why I wanted you to talk about it, because obviously that's a loss for you, and I'm sorry for your loss as well. And but it made me think of the movie 7 Pounds. I won't really ruin the premise. You'll see why, but I think part of that, it's kind of like The Good Place. Part of it is there's a little bit of a swerve in it, and you want to let the movie develop. So I don't want to do a spoiler alert. The movie is like 15, 20 years old, so it's kind of like, can you spoil The Sixth Sense? It's been around for long enough where you kind of know where that one's going. But it is worth watching. But it's an interesting transition from the discussion that we were having, because not that it's analogous, not that it's the same thing, but it's good that Roniel was able to do that, and I think we both encourage people to do that if they feel so inclined, because it can help people in that way.
Absolutely, and I can tell you that I think that while he had the thoughts of so many others when he made himself a donor, he would have also picked red.
Well, hey, it's your teammate. I can't argue with what he would have chosen. And it's funny though, because we'll go back into the discussion for a moment, not necessarily the actual discussion, but I'm curious. So you and I have different backgrounds. Obviously, you were a professional athlete, and I was in the government service. I'm wondering if things would kind of break down the lines a little bit. You would have to answer this for me, so it's more in the form of a question. Do you think most of obviously a lot of people are going to kind of go with, well, if I think this, then a lot of my other people are going to think this. But do you think a lot of professional athletes would choose the same way? Do you think that's something that's kind of melded out of the DNA that you guys had to make it to that level? Or do you think it's not necessarily, you think it'd be closer to 50-50 or whatever the regular ratio would be?
I'd hate to say it's mutually exclusive. Because I am thinking of my own mindset of I got where I got. One, yeah, maybe I had some intrinsic, variables of, physical stature, intrinsic talent. But I know the hard work and development was all on me to get there. And I think a lot of times when you find success sometimes that you truly build, I think sometimes you may end up having the attitude of, I'm going to take care of myself first so I can take care of others. And not to get all deep in it again, but I think that if you hope everyone has the same thought, you hope everyone decides to save themselves so that everyone chooses to still be there, right? So...
do you think it would be a difference between specialists and the guys on the offense and the defense? That just popped into my head.
Well, I mean, I'll say this. Specialists usually carried the GPA for most football teams in college, so... I mean, I'll let you figure that out.
I'll let Shayne have the final point, even though I'm the one to throw to break. I'll be a gentleman and I'll go for the greater good, and I'll let him have the final point. But no, we're going to come back in studio and we're going to talk about some of the news of the week, or maybe we'll pick up this discussion. But come back with us. You're listening to Shayne Graham's Extra Points on Jethro FM. Come back here in studio. That we might have to pick up that discussion as we go here, and we'll have more discussions like that, because that was a fun discussion. But I will stick to letting Shayne have the final word, the extra point there. But no, I wanted to transition to something else, because I always like to get his opinion on all of these things. He lived it, he played it. But it's funny to me, I never put this together until I saw news that Big Dom, the security guy for the Eagles, that I challenge anybody out there to name any other security guy. I know Shayne could, but any fan, I don't know if we can name any others, but he's a celebrity now. It was actually news on the Athletic website that he re-signed with the Eagles, which it just struck me as funny. But then I also thought, you know what? Obviously, you would have played there at some point in time, and I thought, if there's any team that needs security, it's probably the Eagles. But it's not only the Eagles, I don't think. But we don't really hear about it with any of these other teams.
So we always see the Yellow Jacket event staff security. There's also a ton of all the local police precincts that they hire, what they call they're technically off duty, but there's a term for it, and I'm blanking on it.
Like an undercover?
They're not undercover.
Okay.
They're in uniform, but it's kind of like a I really know the term, but I'm blanking.
The only two things I can think of is undercover and plain clothes. That's all I got for you.
So they're in uniform, but they're paid by the team to be there. You sometimes see it like outside of a bar. If you ever see a police officer standing outside of a bar, they are not on shift. This is an extra paid thing they're allowed to do. So they're taking on an extra shift, but it's not through the police department. They're actually paid through like a subcontractor.
Okay.
So the stadiums actually bring a lot of these police officers in, and they are security on the sidelines and even in around the stadium. But one thing that really stands out to me, I think it was 2004, if I'm not mistaken, in Cincinnati. Brett Favre was driving down the field for a game-winning potential drive. As he's in shotgun formation, they snap the ball. A streaker, runs onto the field, and I think they had clothes on, to be honest, but they ran onto the field and grabbed the ball out of his hand. And I think he might have even flipped it to him. And then our security's chasing him all over the field, and one of our guys just trucks this guy. And you just got to think about it, like, it's kind of a hard job to keep your eye on every single corner of that field from people jumping over top of the rail or however they get on there, because you see it in all sports. Somebody usually makes their way out there before they're caught. It's really hard to get them as soon as they go, but sometimes they get smashed.
Well, as somebody that has worked some security and put together security plans for diplomatic visits and all sorts of different things, with that scenario that you're describing, there's not enough uniformity because you've got these people that are hired by different entities. There's not meetings where you've got all the people in the room saying, okay, well, the ushers, here's your responsibility. The police hired by the stadium, here's your responsibility. On the sidelines, Big Dom and crew, here's your responsibility. It's no, George Costanza as bodysuit man runs on the field to streak, and then somebody's got to read and react. And sometimes I know, I don't know if this ever happened in any of the games that you were in, but I know sometimes the players even intervene, and they say, hey, we're here to tackle people. We're going to tackle you. You're not supposed to be here.
And what you're basically, you can't expect a lot of different subcontracted people or people that, only get together on Sunday, and it's not, and a lot of those people maybe are security around the stadium during the week. There's just not a whole lot of need for it because mostly the gates are locked. But it's not like they're having when you watch these special operator crews that run through the house and orchestrate and choreograph every move they're going to make clearing a house until they get to what they're looking for, or seeing SWAT teams practice and do this and do that. These guys are not practicing these scenarios. They're just having to react on the fly because they may go years without anything ever happening. So it can be entertaining as a fan to kind of see that. I mean, I remember the Super Bowl in 2003. John Casey is lining up to kick off. I think Ricky Prohl scored the game-tying or game-leading touchdown with less than a minute to play. And John Casey is lining up to kick off, and a streaker runs up and gets the ball off the tee.
Oh, boy.
Butt naked. And John Casey was a good friend of mine. I actually filled in for John the year before, and then after that season, I ended up going to Cincinnati. He stayed in Carolina and got to play in a Super Bowl, and he kicks the ball out of bounds because that was the next play, and then that led to great field position, and then Adam Vinatieri coming down and kicking a 40-yard field goal to win the game.
I don't remember this at all, and that's wild. That I feel bad for that situation.
Yeah. Can you imagine keeping your focus after you're getting ready to put the ball on the tee? You put it on the tee, and a naked guy runs up and picks it up off the tee, and now you got to refocus yourself.
I mean, Belichick, he was playing chess, not checkers out there.
Ooh.
Was he? I mean,
Skingate.
Exactly.
Yeah, never thought of that. Never thought of that.
Hey, that's why you got the intelligence guy on the show. We're used to doing these missions and different things like that. So that's how I always I think of that part of it. Is it counterintelligence? Is it psyops?
Yeah, right.
One of those things. But no, great stuff. Appreciate all the discussions here today. We're going to come back with Ryan Mathews after the break of Pride of Detroit. So stick with us. You're listening to Shayne Graham's Extra Points on Jethro FM. We've kind of settled down in studio. Shayne had to leave, but now we got the Ryans. We got Ryan Power here. But here's the only problem, Ryan. I know you're used to us having a thing of the day. We had a first segment where we had former Lion Rob Rubick on. He basically took over the show and cut me out, and it was athletes only. So I wasn't able to really participate in my own show. So we weren't able to really choose the thing of the day. So you can help me because you're the last remaining guest. And so it was Leg of Lamb Day. And so I was thinking we could talk about that because we have talked about food before. There's also Tourism Day. So wherever you would want to go, there's Make a Book Day. So you could also figure out where, what book you would want to write. And we have a write-in candidate because Shayne and I had an interesting discussion. He introduced the concept to me of this whole red button, blue button debate. And so he then had me choose which button I would choose. So you've got a lot of choices. So I'm leaving the board open. You know how to run with these things. So you choose your favorite out of the national days, and you pick the national day for us.
You're putting it on me, huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. How about tourism? How about tourism? I now that I have kids, don't get to do it as much as I used to, but I do enjoy a good vacation. So, do you have a favorite spot yourself?
I do. So I've been to 40 plus countries in my life. So I've been fortunate with the amount of travel that I've been able to do almost every state. It's hard. I almost have to break it down by category. So I've been to the Maldives. If you're talking idyllic, blue water, bungalows over the water that you can go directly into the water, kind of that dream location that you think is only in your mind. That was the Maldives for me. It's also world-class scuba diving. I'm a certified scuba diver, so I did diving down there. That place was tough to beat. I think there's different categories, and that may fill the kind of water category, coastline category, but it'd be tough to beat just across the board. It's hard to compare to maybe mountains and other things, but that would probably be, if I had to pick one, that would be my one. Do you have one in mind, or a bucket list? We could do that too, bucket list trip.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, that's a great choice. I mean, I think what's always so jarring is when you do travel to international waters and you see the water and it's like, oh no, it is like that in real life too. It's not just the pictures. So, I mean, that's definitely on like a bucket list for me, the vacation you just described. But the most serene, beautiful place that I've ever been in my entire life, I swear by it. I almost didn't move back. I went there on a week's vacation to visit a friend, the Pacific Northwest. Like, I mean, it feels everything like, it feels like everything that home should feel like it's cozy. Yeah, it rains, but also when it's not raining, the sun comes out and there's mountains, there's beautiful coastline on the Pacific Ocean, right? Like I camped on the beach at Olympic National Park at Shai Beach, and that's just one of those memories that I'll never forget for sure.
That's a great one. And that's one of the rare. So I said I've been to almost every state. I really haven't done much in Washington. So that's kind of still on my list eventually. I had a buddy that was stationed over in that area. I wanted to visit him, but it didn't make it, and so that's still on my list. But yeah, there's just so much to see out there that I know people usually say, well, oh man, you've been to 40 countries. That's so many. That's not even near half of what's out there, and you kind of learn that as you go. It's like, I'm very fortunate if I don't go to another country for the rest of my life. Very fortunate, but it's still the more you see, the more you learn is out there, and that's why travel is so important. We're very deep today on the show here, Ryan. I don't know what's going on. I'm all thrown off. But no, that's a good discussion. But I do want to get your takes on the Lions here, because we have not talked in a little bit. We haven't. You were on the show that I missed, and so I want to get your thoughts, because it was an interesting draft. It's been an interesting off season. So I guess I'll leave it kind of open and say your thoughts on the off season so far, because I haven't talked to you in the off season yet.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about the offseason with you. It has been a minute. For the Lions, I feel like I've seen their draft described this way. But I also think it's good to extrapolate it and apply it to the entire offseason. I really feel like it was a meat and potatoes offseason. I think that there were people that were hoping that it would be surf and turf. I think that there were people that were hoping Brad would open up the old pocketbook and splurge on a nice fancy meal, but I think this was everything that the Lions needed. And you start with their commitment to rebuilding the identity of their football team, which is their offensive line. That offensive line, for years, it took them as far as it was going to take them, and without it, I think we saw just how human their offense can be. And I mean, we're still talking about an offense that was top 5 in the NFL. But it was missing some of that je ne sais quoi, right? And it was the offensive line. So I think on day one, getting Cade Mays, that kind of sets the tone, and just the right kind of deal for Detroit, right? Like, Linderbaum was going to be too expensive. Cade Mays made all the sense in the world. You end up losing Taylor Decker, and then the situation that ensued there. Larry Borum was, and still is, like, he's good depth. I don't think anybody expected him to be the starter. I do think that it's amazing that Brad Holmes was able to hide the fact that the Lions very obviously had a need at tackle going into the draft, and they still got one of their top guys at right tackle in Blake Miller. So, I have to commend Detroit just for doing what they needed to do, not doing what maybe some external pressure may have suggested, or straying from what has got them to this point by, maybe taking the less need approach with the, F them picks kind of thing, or, trying to get into free agency and spend, and maybe the window is closing. I think, Ryan, the most important thing, the offensive line for this football team, I feel much better about their offensive line going into 2026 than I did in 2025.
Definitely. And I think one of the underrated things that a lot of the fans may not really learn until the season, because I think you highlighted the Cade Mays pickup nicely, because I think it's perfect for the Lions. I know that people kind of go, well, it's someone else's money. Let's break the bank for Tyler Linderbaum, or let's try to get McGovern, or whoever the top guys are out there. But it's always, you have to prioritize different things. And I thought, for the value, I think that's what you always have to look at when you're doing a trade, when you're signing somebody. It's the relative value for that guy. This is a guy that still could have some potential, I think, especially in the Lions room with the other guys that he's surrounded by, with Fraley in there. And I think, he's young enough where there's still some potential, and they got him at a good amount where he can be the centerpiece. And yeah, it's hard to compare anybody to Ragnow, but we didn't have Ragnow last year either. So but you've got that piece, but they also concurrently upgraded pretty much all the other pieces. You could kind of debate with the tackle side of things, but especially the depth side. Borum is a bit of an upgrade, especially because, no offense to the world's most famous sixth offensive lineman, Dan Skipper, but you get Borum as the swing tackle, and then you get Skipper in the coaching room, which I think is a great spot for him. And then you get Borum in there. He should have some juice. And then the interior is going to be interesting, because the depth, yes, we had some issues with the Ragnow thing and Decker being injured, and obviously the guard situation not really working out with the injuries. But the depth really showed itself too, the lack thereof. And this year, we're not even 100% sure who's going to be one of the starters, I don't think, unless you are. But collectively, I think somebody could win one of those jobs out of camp. And even if Mahogany is the victor on that particular position, you've upgraded all those depth pieces where if they do have to go into the depth and shift things around, they're in a lot better shape.
Yeah, I agree. The ancillary things, the additions they made in the margins, which, I think we talked about this on our prior show. Like, I think Brad Holmes does a pretty good job of picking at the margins of free agency and kind of helping this roster along its peripherals. And, you bring up the left guard situation. A lot of people are going to look really good at left guard when they're playing next to Penei Sewell. So, you have great competition there, though. And that's something that the Lions, since Brad and Dan have taken over, they've always preached competition. And I think their postseason comments talking about how, we have to kind of get back to who we were a little bit. And, if you think about the offensive line last year, how much competition was there at center? It was Graham Glasgow's job to lose, really. They tried Tate Ratledge for a couple days and it didn't work. You look at that left guard spot now that you just highlighted. If it's Christian Mahogany, awesome, great. If it's not him, it could be Juice Scruggs, the guy that you got in the deal for David Montgomery. If it's not him, that's okay. You signed Ben Bartch, who's had a pretty solid NFL career, played pretty good in San Francisco last year. You have options. You have Miles Frazier. You have an awful lot of depth and the cream can rise to the top. And I just can't stress how much better I feel about that offensive line. And Ryan, the last point I want to make about it is that the money that they would have spent on Taylor Decker, he was going to be a $21 million cap hit. When they decided to release him, they saved, in essence, around $11.5 million. It costs you less than $11.5 million to bring in Cade Mays and Blake Miller. And I think that's just such an underrated trade-off because of the Cade Mays contract, because you get Blake Miller, which I think that's just another sneaky, interesting piece to keeping payroll down, is having an offensive tackle on a rookie contract. Like that's another. We can keep things at a relatively low cost here along an offensive line when we have high price players like Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jamison Williams, and maybe pretty soon it might be Jahmyr Gibbs. So it's a really savvy move by Brad Holmes, and I think that he's done a fantastic job of rebuilding the offensive line.
A lot of great points in there as usual, and I'm glad you brought up that value proposition, because that's what I'm always kind of looking at as well. And I think people, I mean, obviously the GMs are thinking about all of these things, but I think they'll find, Holmes always tends to find these types of advantages, and I do think that's a true advantage. I mean, it's been talked about enough, but the whole idea of a quarterback on a rookie deal has been pretty successful if you can get the right guy and then kind of build around him. And then obviously when that math changes and you flip from, just take maybe one of the bigger examples of say a Mahomes, when they were able to spend around him, they had a lot more talent around Mahomes. But now that Mahomes is taking up a bigger percentage of the cap, it's tougher to build around him, because that's just how it works. You gotta have the budget, you gotta operate under the budget. But yeah, they upgraded both positions for that same amount of money with a guy that was on his way out, getting him out of there. And I don't know that I want to get into will Miller be better than Decker from day one or anything like that, but obviously the trajectory is looking a lot better, and so I'm excited about that. And I also want to have the discussion, maybe we'll take a quick break, but I want to come back with the discussion of the Blake Miller pick, and kind of, like you said, that was a sneaky good pick, but I want to discuss the evolution of it and the news surrounding it and how they kind of concealed it to a degree, like you were saying, Ryan. But we'll come back with Ryan Mathews of Pride of Detroit. Stick with us. You're listening to Shayne Graham's Extra Points on Jethro FM. Coming back here with Ryan Mathews of Pride of Detroit, having a good discussion about the offseason and his thoughts here. And this was an interesting one, Ryan, because I think this was, and there was probably more of you guys in Pride of Detroit that felt this way, but the one that was most out there about this was Eric Schlitt. I feel like him and I were very early on the Blake Miller thing, because I felt like when a lot of the beat writers were coming on the show, I was really kind of pounding the table for Blake Miller pretty early, because the best way I could have to describe it is when I started to see the comparison between, okay, there's kind of a group that's thinking more in the Proctor camp, and there's a group that's thinking in the Miller camp. When I looked at Miller's description and biography and all of that, it was like you had asked AI, you'd asked ChatGPT to draw you up an ideal Lions lineman, and they just populated a bunch of things and then put the generic name of Blake Miller, create a player on top, because that's how it read to me. Whereas I have a hard time talking about this without coming out looking too negative with Caden Proctor, but he didn't read the same way as far as what the Lions typically go for. So I'm curious kind of how you saw that evolution with those two and the other options that were out there, because it was a good year to take a tackle.
Yeah, I found it really interesting just how the draft evolved over the course of the night, because you get, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but at 9 it's Fano, at 10 it's Maui Noah, and at 12 it's Caden Proctor. So, with the way that the draft started, it seemed like, Jeremiah Love's coming off the board, Carnell Tate's going fourth overall. Like, oh man, okay, there's some guys who are sneaking up here ahead of, in the top 10 that I'm not sure if they were necessarily going to end up being top 10 players, but those are all positions that the Lions aren't taking in the first round. And then you get that run on the offensive tackles. And I think one of the most interesting stories that came out of the draft was, Nate Atkins, a former Lions beat writer who now works for The Athletic and covers the Rams. Brad Holmes was calling up to, where the where the Rams were picking at 13. Hey, sniffing around, interested in kind of moving up there and making sure they get their guy. And they were looking to move up and grab Blake Miller. So, he also called up and the Ravens, right? The Ravens said that they had an offer on the table with a team that was going to offer a 4th-round pick this year and a 4th-round pick next year to move up to 14. Kind of sounds like that was the Detroit Lions. They had an extra 4th-round pick, and Brad Holmes is unafraid of trading away future draft capital. So, I love the Blake Miller pick. I graded it an A on draft night because he was one of those few players that was in a bucket where I said, if it's one of these guys, they nailed it. And it was one of those guys, and they didn't have to trade up to the Rams pick. They didn't have to trade up a few spots and give up an extra, 4th-round pick. And, the Blake Miller fit is perfect for me. I don't know if the positional rigidity of him just only, for the most part, playing right tackle at Clemson, I don't know if that was something that, teams didn't love or teams didn't, view as, hey, we're not getting our left tackle of the future. I don't know how much of that still comes into play these days. I think everybody knows that your offensive tackles are both equally important, but you have a guy who started 54 games since being a true freshman, played in all 54 games, and they think he missed one practice in 4 years. And I know the quote was, the thought of letting down his coaches and teammates kills him. Like, okay, and then you put on the tape and you see the nasty demeanor that he plays with. You're right, Ryan. I mean, the thing was is that this guy was kind of almost like predestined to become a Detroit Lion, and I don't for the life of me understand why he wasn't talked about in the same way as Fano or Maui Noah or Caden Proctor. I get Caden Proctor, the size, the allure of that. Maui Noah, really great player. I'm not trying to discredit any of these guys, but if you told me that there was an offensive tackle prospect who played 54 out of 54 games, he is the 17th most athletic offensive tackle since 1987 with a RAS score of 9.9, and he has 34-inch arms. This guy's a top 5 pick, top 7 pick, and I just don't quite understand what I'm not getting out of this. So I think the Lions got incredible value, Blake Miller. And I think he's going to be a really, really good offensive tackle.
I'm 100% with you, and I'm glad you brought up that as a question, because one of the things that I was seeing because we were interviewing a ton of folks from the Lions beat and then peppering in some folks that I know that do some of the national draft stuff, and there was a clear delineation that was happening where the people on the national beat all had the report that the Lions were very high on Proctor. And then you had a real, when you talked to the Lions beat, it was a real difference. They were talking about, okay, yeah, they were kind of gravitating over towards Miller. There was some Freeling thrown in there, but it became a Proctor versus Miller. But it was almost exclusive to which beat you were on. If you were a national draft pundit, it was a lot more Proctor talk with a little Freeling mixed in. If you were on the local beat, it gravitated towards Miller with a little Freeling mixed in, but it picked up towards the draft. But I do think that I have a theory on that in a second. But to answer your question, I have been highlighting on the show how much aggregation there is with all of this draft stuff, because even though you have all these draft pundits, it's impossible to know all of these players and be able to do tape on them. And yes, we have the Mel Kipers of the world that sit up there and eat pumpkin pie and dip things in mashed potatoes. and then he's going on about every prospect. And obviously those segments, he has some production assistants and people that help research and they put the package together. But it's still impressive that he knows all those guys. However, I think it's hard to know them to the depth that you really need to to understand where these things all slot in. So then there's some trusting of, okay, everybody pretty much has Miller as a 20s and 30s guy, so they must be seeing something. But to your point, Ryan, I never saw, it was like the criticisms of him were kind of grasping at straws. Well, he can't play left tackle. I mean, do we know that? I don't know that we know that. He just only played right tackle. He hadn't really been tried at left tackle. I wouldn't put it past him to be able to go over there. Is he better at right tackle? I would assume so, since that's where he played. But that was one of the criticisms. And then there were some things with his leverage and different things when you're getting into the analytics. But they were small things that I felt like still translated very well, but I felt like they were trying to justify an aggregate position that everybody had kind of objectively put him at, and then said, okay, well, we got him here, so we got to kind of put him behind these other guys, and then they kind of filled in the blank afterwards.
Yeah, you saw it with a lot of the offensive tackle prospects, right? Like, I think Monroe Freeling went from a fringe first-round, second-round guy to, I mean, geez, like a week before the draft, I was like, the way that this guy is being talked about, I wouldn't be surprised if he's the first offensive tackle off the board. But I think what's interesting, what you bring up, Ryan, is you do have some of these national NFL draft analysts who they do a ton of incredible work, and I'm not trying to discredit anything they do, but to your point about, the beat is getting a bit of a different vibe, and maybe they're hearing or just projecting things in a different way than the national media is, and it's because, like, there's no way that you can really be a national NFL draft guy and be so in tune with what's going on with each football team and the kind of players that they have, historically under that current regime have been interested in and have targeted. And I know Eric Schlitt did incredible work over on our website to create the Grit Index, and the Grit Index has really kind of proven its worth in how it's been able to identify the types of players that Brad and Dan are interested in and value and covet, like in terms of their football character, in terms of their leadership, in terms of, some of the intangible things that are really hard to pin down. I think it's so incredibly hard for national people to be that in tune with, 32 football teams and know how all these guys tick, because especially, I mean, some of these teams have new GMs, right? Like it's just so hard to predict and project those things. So, and I'll tell you what, like I didn't buy the Caden Proctor stuff for a minute. I mean, you're telling me that, this Lions facility in Allen Park has been such a fortress that, I mean, we hardly knew about the top 30 visits they had. They didn't have their own pro day. I mean, it was locked down this spring in Allen Park, and you're telling me that everybody and their mother knew that the Lions loved Caden Proctor? Boy, whoever leaked that rumor should get a nice bonus from Brad Holmes and company, because it worked.
Well, I think they are getting a bonus. This is my theory, and maybe I'm putting on my intelligence hat here because I used to work with this kind of stuff, but information and all of that. But when you think about it, and you think about how calculated they are as a whole, and they were this offseason, and then what actually was leaked, the fact that in the open they're meeting with Caden Proctor at the Senior Bowl, and that's one of the few prospects that they're seen meeting, yet we can't get information on the top 30 visits and anything else. And then all of a sudden Schrager and Daniel Jeremiah and all these guys have this report that they're in love with Proctor. I think that was all because, in this day and age, it's very hard to conceal information. I think they do a good job of it as a Lions organization. They don't have a lot of leaks. And so when they do have a leak, I think that was by design. I think it was, hey, if we can't suppress the information, then we're going to add misinformation, and we're going to go PSYOPs style with,
yeah.
And that's, the more I was kind of learning about this, because it just became fascinating to me that I'm listening literally on the same episode. I'm having an NFL draft pundit, and then I'm having one of you guys on the beat, and it was like, this I'm able to kind of aggregate that information in a way and say, you know what? I think they're doing this intentionally. I think they're not making mistakes. They're not going, whoops, we met with Caden Proctor in public. That was intentional. And it was intentional that they didn't show a lot of attention to maybe a Blake Miller and some of the other guys they were interested in. And I think it's brilliant if that's what they pulled off. And I wouldn't put it past Brad Holmes, the way that he does things.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. And, you know, and we didn't really get a chance to talk about much of the rest of the Lions NFL draft, but you know, overall, again, just a big fan of what the Lions were able to put together this offseason on a limited budget with, you know, certain constraints, no third round pick. You know, and by no means am I saying like, oh man, the Lions they're back, like the rookies are all going to be starting on defense, and Jimmy Rolder is going to be your weak side linebacker day one, and Derek Moore is going to set the world on fire, and you know this, that, and the other thing. But you don't have to squint to see how this draft class will help. You know, kind of just calm the waters here. That things got a little bit rocky over the past 8 or so months.
Exactly. I think a lot of the guys that they picked, no, they're not necessarily slated to start outside of presumably Miller, but and Moore should factor in. But the idea is that they're adding some not necessarily duplicative pieces, but complementary pieces that can fill in if things don't go to plan. And I feel like they didn't have that last year, and they were going, okay, this year we're going to have a little bit of a succession plan that if these guys that, yeah, we do believe in, we do think are going to perk up and play pretty well, if they are hurt, if they don't make it through camp, if they don't play up to the standard that we had for them, then that's another guy that kind of slots into some of those somewhat unique positions too on the Lions, because they do look for kind of some unique archetypes. I think they're kind of building in a succession plan there.
Yeah, I think the point you made about having contingency plans is great. I will say that I love Keith Abney. I know everybody kind of does, just because the consensus big board said he should have been, a late day 2 pick, and the Lions get him in round 5. But we just actually filmed a first bite NFL draft review where we talked to all the beat writers of these players that the Lions drafted from their former teams. We talked to those beat writers, and I mean, there couldn't have been any more nicer things that someone had to say about, Keith Abney than they did in their interview. And not just about who he is as a football player, but who he is as a human being. And again, it just kind of comes back to that knowledge of like, of course this guy was, it happens almost every draft where it's like, of course that guy was going to be a Detroit Lion. Like the writing was on the wall. You should have seen it. And that's why I said Eric Schlitt does such a great job with that grid index. But I mean, Abney could very well be the Lions starting nickel cornerback on day one. But if he isn't, Ryan, they brought in Roger McCreary. Like, they have a 1-year stopgap. They brought in Christian Izzy, and maybe he's got some experience playing nickel cornerback. Maybe it's Avonte Maddox. Like, they have so many contingency plans that it's like, okay, like if something doesn't go plan A, they have a plan B. And in some cases, they might have a plan C. So, yeah, this draft does a lot to, it does a lot to elicit, encouragement about the direction that the Lions are heading in, and that window wasn't as close to shutting as a lot of people kind of, characterized it to be.
Oh yeah, the window talk, that got old with me quickly. I mean, they're focusing on a young core. They've made a lot of good moves in the last few years, so I thought that was a little silly. But that's kind of a doom and gloom approach that works better in other facets of the sports content. We don't, Pride of Detroit, and on our show we don't focus on that stuff. So yeah, like you said, I think the window is wide open, and they're going to continue to have this succession plan and contingency plan. But we'll definitely have you back on. Hopefully we can talk more about the draft and then what else happens in the offseason, because we'll see what else happens. But we'll get you back on the show. We appreciate you joining the show, and be sure to tell people where they can follow all these great things that you guys are doing.
Yeah, I mean, I'll keep it short and sweet because I have something else. But, prideofdetroit.com is where you can find the best Lions coverage that you'll find on the internet. But I wanted to share my condolences for Pat Caputo. His his passing that was announced today by his family, like, just really sad. Kind of hit me in a spot, and kind of poetic that I'm, like, on the radio right now talking to you. But, I think back to when I was a teenager and calling in a sports talk radio and all those great memories I have from talking to Pat. So I just want to let you know that, the stuff that you do is awesome, Ryan, and it's so very important, especially in today's day and age, just to, share a story and have a conversation and not to yell at one another, even though, sometimes Pat would get on me about my teenager opinions about Marcus Timms being, an everyday starting outfielder, or thinking that Jason Maxiel was going to be the Lions starting power forward for 12 seasons. But, just really important stuff that happens here on the radio, and I wanted to give you the opportunity to kind of get your flowers, so to speak. So,
well, I appreciate that, Ryan, and the format is dependent upon getting great guests in here too, and getting you guys on here and being able to rap with you guys and like you said, have a discussion, because even though Shayne and I had a discussion where we were opposed as far as our viewpoints on that particular discussion, I joked that we were becoming Skip Bayless and Stephen A. Smith, but we were not. We didn't yell at each other. We didn't attack each other in any sort of way. And it's the same way, because there's got to be room to air these opinions and to learn and understand. And that's what I like, because I talk to you guys on the beat and I learn and understand better. The reason why I was able to figure out that Blake Miller thing and the Proctor thing is because I listened to you guys on the beat and you were telling me different things, and I'm putting all the information together and then compiling it and trying to spread it to the masses. So I appreciate it very much, and it's very collaborative. Yeah, our thoughts go out to Pet Caputo and his family, and definitely a loss there. Long-standing content creator before that phrase even existed. But but no, I appreciate that, and definitely enjoy the partnership that I have with you guys at Pride of Detroit and all the folks on the beat, and we'll look forward to having you back on soon to talk more here.
Of course, I appreciate it, Ryan. You have a nice night.
All right, thanks. You too. Thanks to Ryan Mathews. Appreciate the nice compliment at the end here. That cancels out Rob taking over the show at the beginning, so that's perfect. But you know what? I've had MLB in studio the whole time. I don't think I've even mentioned him. He's sitting here. He's keeping me on track. He's looking at me like, hey, get me on the show here. So we're going to do that after the break. We're going to talk a little baseball and maybe check in on the Pistons game, because they've been playing while we've been on the air. So, and we've got a couple ticket giveaways to announce. So we got a lot of business to take care of, Mike and I. We'll do that after the break. Stick with us. You're listening to Shayne Graham's Extra Points on Jethro FM. Coming back here in studio with MLB, I figured we'd talk a little Tigers on a rare day off, Mike. I feel like we have had a lot of Tigers games. They've got to be ahead of some of these other teams in amount of games played here.
Well, I'm going to look up something right here, but it's been a struggle the last week. They've had their share of injuries, haven't they?
Oh, big time.
It just keeps coming. But they're in second place in the Central, American League Central, and 2 games under 500. They're only a game and a half out. So it's a good thing they're in the Central, because nobody's killing it there. 4-6 in their last 10. The Guardians are in first place. They're 5-5 in their last 10. They're going to Royals starting tomorrow. They're 17-21, so they're not killing it, but they're only 2.5 games out themselves. So it's early, lots and lots of time to go. Got a lot of guys that next man up mentality. The way they've been going down, they're going to have to sink or swim.
Exactly. I did feel like they had a good amount of depth this year, more depth than in previous years, but unfortunately now that's being tested, because I've had this discussion on the Lions side of things where people say, well, they didn't have enough pieces last year. Well, when you lose your entire secondary, it's kind of hard to have enough depth to replace that. Right. That's kind of what they're undergoing here with the pitching staff. They're basically missing an entire staff. The staff that's out right now would be great.
Yeah, talking the Lions, I mean, next man up is one thing, but bringing practice squad players to start in the game, that's totally another. It's not quite that wide of a gap with the Tigers because they have a lot of, everybody's got to be at least somewhat good to be where they're at. But if they're ready to be in the majors, just don't know until they're there.
Yeah, you've got the minor leagues to pull from, but it does kind of remind me of when the Lions were missing. There was a point 2 seasons ago where they were missing an entire defense, and their defensive players that they were missing would have been a better defense than the players that they actually had on the field, than the healthy players. Yep. And that's kind of what's starting to happen with this starting pitching staff, because if you include the injuries that we already knew about at the beginning of the year, like Reese Olson and Jackson Jobe, if you put them together with Verlander and Skubal, you're building at Mize, you're building a very nice rotation there.
And look at all of those guys, the starting 5. Right now, you've got 1. Of course, Valdez is on suspension, so he'll be back on, Thursday.
Yeah, I think he's just missing 1 start with that suspension.
5
basically.
days, but 1 start, yeah. But I don't know if you saw that pitch, and he said it wasn't intentional. Yeah, it was.
It's always hard because I covered for Steve's show yesterday, and we talked to Mark Dewey, who was a major league pitcher, and we talked about this because, I'm not a former player. I can't claim to be, but when a guy comes over from the left side and hits a left-handed batter like that, that's tough for me as far as coming all the way across. It's one thing if you lose it and it's coming in and it's and it is a right-handed batter. Yeah. If it's coming in on a left-handed batter, then that's one thing. Right. That's like, okay, he lost control of it a little bit, tailed out on him. If he's got to come all the way across the plate and plunk him, that's a long way to go for a lefty.
And with his, maybe I'm all wet. Maybe it got away from him. He says it did, but just didn't look right. The optics didn't look good. But those guys, his track record over the last 5-6 years, he's stellar. And an innings eater. Those guys can thread a needle, with a pitch. So to tell me that it got at least 1.5 feet got away from me, hard to buy. But anyway,
yeah, and I would have bought it a little bit more if they were up 2-1.
Yeah, not after 2 straight home runs.
Yeah, yeah,
and
exactly.
I think 4 singles before that.
Yeah, exactly. So the timing does matter. And Mark, for the record, because he played and he knows this stuff, he coached all of that. He felt the same way. He felt that was intentional on Valdez's part, and that's unfortunate. And you don't. That's not helpful either, because now he's missing one of his days, and we're leaning on the bullpen and some of these other guys, which is what led to some of the mileage on the Tyler Holtons of the world and some other folks that maybe made him not look as good down the stretch last year.
And what was it, 10-2 at that point?
Yeah,
8-2, 10-2, something like that. When he hit that guy and got ejected, that was only the 4th inning, and Hitt said he had to get some innings in. So he was no matter how bad he was getting pounded, he was not coming out until he got ejected.
Exactly. That was probably the only way he was going out of the game, to your point, Mike. And those were valuable innings. Now you've got to stretch those guys out, and you've got to have a bunch of guys that they're still figuring out that relief side of things too, because they're clearly trying out some of these new guys, DeJesus and Anderson and some of the other guys that they acquired, but they're trying to figure out, I think, where, and maybe even possibly in some cases if they fit in that bullpen. But they're also not able to use them in the designed scenarios if you're having to kind of go to the pitching chaos mode.
Yeah. And I used to think pitching chaos, it wasn't called that back then, but when you start a reliever, and I just figured you're just throwing up the white flag right now. We're going to lose this game, we'll just kind of get through it. But no, they turned it into an art form. The last couple of years, they made it work, and Hinge is good at it. He definitely deals with matchups, and whatever it's going to take, we're gonna do our best to win.
Well, there's the phrase chess, not checkers. I always say he's playing 3 or maybe even 4D chess out there. It is amazing what he's doing, and he is taking advantage, to your point, of the matchups and of what he has access to. Okay, I don't have a traditional starter that can go 7 innings in this particular turn. Okay, well, I'll take advantage of the fact that give me your lineup. What are you putting out there? Okay, you're going to get Holton first, then you're going to get Ty Madden as far as next guy up. He looked good in his bulk you can't call him the starter, but bulk innings role when he was ostensibly the starter in that game, that pitching chaos game, one of them. And Montero, he's the first version of next man up because he obviously started in the minors and now he's been a bit of a revelation at the back end of that bullpen, maybe not so back end anymore.
Well, and he finished last year just doing a stellar job filling in for, I think they only had 2 or 3 healthy starters last year, and that's what a lot of this piecemeal games came from, or him, something like him. And so he was the last guy sent down this spring. I don't know if you remember at the end of spring training, Montero was the last pitcher that they sent down, and Verlander didn't even get to make his first start, not even a week into the season. Here he is, and he's done well.
And I'm sure that was the plan when they sent him down, because that's obviously why they sent him down versus they could have kept him in the bullpen. I think there were some people saying, he's better than some of the bullpen arms out there. Yeah, he is, but I think they envisioned him as a starter. They wanted to keep him stretched out, and so they did that by putting him down to Toledo. The same thing with Perez. I mean, Perez was sent down to Toledo with the idea of, hey, somebody's going to get hurt at some time in the season. Unfortunately, there were a decent amount of injuries on the hitting side of things too. You had the Meadows injury that started it out, but the outfielders and utility players have been hit fairly hard between Meadows, and then McKinstry plays all over the place. He thankfully is just getting back into the swing of things, but Baez then as well. So yeah, the injury bug has bit him for basically being 20% of the way through the season.
Yeah, it's like I said, they're only one and a half games out right now. Just hang on, get some healthy bodies back in there. They've got to start hitting. I don't know what it is that they cannot get any consistent offense going. But last night's game, was it last night? 4-0, Flaherty.
Yes.
Yeah. He's been struggling. He's the only healthy starter right now, but he's been struggling. Well, except for Montero. But he only. I looked at the box score. He pitched 4 innings, only gave up 2 runs, only gave up 3 hits, struck out 10.
And I will
in that half a game.
And I will say, I watched that game today. I wasn't able to watch it last night, but he pitched very well because unfortunately, what really hampered him yesterday was the defense. There were some situational stuff that just did not go his way, and he handled that well because that's kind of how his starts have been going. He's had flashes, but then there's like that 15 to 20 or so pitches that kind of goes haywire, and he can't come back after that.
And it started to happen yesterday again. On first 2 innings, he just mowed him down. Then I think it was the third, maybe the fourth, but anyway, first 2 guys are on, nobody out, and then it just seems to come unraveled, and he has to get himself something, gather himself, whatever he has to do, and thought, here we go again, because that's what he's been fighting. He can be great one inning and horrible the next, but he got it back.
Exactly. Yeah. It was a good game to watch. I know the 4-0 wasn't the result that we wanted, but yeah, it was nice to see him have a quality start out there. But we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to check in on the Pistons game, announce the winners of the giveaways here, the ticket giveaways, and close up the show. So Stick with us. You're listening to Shayne Graham's Extra Points on Jethro FM. I want to thank Encore Business Group and the rest of our sponsors: Air Call Aesthetic and General Dentistry, Williams Chiropractic, Elite Winning Solutions, and Sal's Complete Home Painting and Handyman Services. I had Sal over at my house today, helped me with some more things. So thank you to all of those sponsors and their support on the show. Want to announce so we had, I didn't tell you this yet, Mike, but we had some tickets to give away here. So we were talking with Rob Rubick about his event. So we had some tickets to give away for that. Those tickets went to Tyler Halwerda. So congratulations to him. He's going to be able to see the All-Stars on Saturday at Wyoming High School. And hopefully maybe you can talk to Rob for me. Maybe I'll get him to talk to Rob for me. But then we also had, I had Steve's show yesterday, but we didn't do the Winning Wednesday announcement for the Griffins. So we have some Winning Wednesday tickets to give away for now the playoffs. We had Elaine come in and cover the playoffs. They're in the thick of it here, the Griffins are, and so they got the game on Friday. So congratulations to Jason Colgrove and Abby Tenhoff.
This episode is brought to you by Encore Business Group, Eric Cole Aesthetic and General Dentistry, Williams Chiropractic, Elite Winning Solutions, and Sal's Complete Home Painting and Handyman Services. Shayne Graham's Extra Points with Ron Walsh airs live Thursdays, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern on Jethro.fm.